Hey everybody, Mr. Palmer here, and I wanted to take a minute to introduce a book to you, and hopefully you'll join in. Maybe you have this book at home, and I love to read, and I love to read to people. And so, if you got some time and you want to sit back and just listen to a story, this is a good one. It's by one of my favorite authors. His name is Christoper Paul Curtis. He's from Flint, Michigan, and he was working in a factory in Flint doing auto work, and he wasn't real happy with his life, and so he started writing this book, and this was the result. The Watsons Go to Birmingham, 1963. And this book made it possible that he could quit his factory job and devote his whole time to writing. Pretty cool. It won the Newbery Honor and the Coretta Scott King Honor awards. So it didn't actually win the medal, but it was up and running for it. And not bad for a debut novel. Yeah. I'm pretty happy because mine is an autographed copy. This was his first book, but his second book is the one that I used to read all the time, and I was going to read it to you all, but I couldn't find my copy. It's an autograph too. That one's called Bud Not Buddy, and that one did win the Newbery, which is the best children's literature, young adult literature, and the Coretta Scott King Award, which is the same award, best for a black author. And that's an awesome book too. So let me give you a little overview. This one says, The Watson Goes to Birmingham, 1963, Christoper Paul Curtis. Enter the hilarious world of 10-year-old Kenny and his family, the weird Watsons of Flint, Michigan. There's Mama, Dad, little sister Joetta, Kenny, and Brian, who's 13 and an official juvenile delinquent. When Mommy and Dad decide it's time for a visit to Grandma, Dad comes home with amazing Ultra Glide, and the Watsons set on a trip like no other. They're heading south. They're going to Birmingham, Alabama, toward one of the darkest moments in American history. So, in addition to the Newbery Honor and the Coretta Scott King Honor, it was an LAL Best Book for Young Adults and an ALA Notable Book. So, pretty cool. Christoper Paul Curtis dedicated this book to his parents, Dr. Herman and Leslie Lewis Curtin, who gave their children both roots and wings and encouraged us to soar. My sister, Sydney Eleanor Curtis, who has been unfailingly supportive, kind, and herself, and above all, to my wife, Cassandra Ann Sukerman Curtis, who has provided a warmth and a love that allowed me to laugh, to grow, and most importantly, to dream. I'm not going to read the acknowledgments. He also has a list of in memory of, so maybe some of his family members. Chapter 1. And you wonder why we get called the Weird Watsons. It was one of those super duper cold Saturdays. One of those days when you breathed out, your breath kind of hung frozen and like air, like a hunk of smoke, and you could walk along and look exactly like a train blowing out big, fat, white puffs of smoke. It was so cold that if you were stupid enough to go outside, your eyes would automatically blink 1,000 times all by themselves. Probably so the juice inside of them wouldn't freeze up. It was so cold that if you spit, the slob would be an ice cube before it hit the ground. It was about a zillion degrees below zero. It was even cold inside our house. We put sweaters and hats and scarves and 3 pairs of socks on and still were cold. The thermostat was turned all the way up and the furnace was banging, sounding like it was about to blow up, but it still felt like Jack Frost had moved in with us. All of my family sat real close together on the couch under a blanket. Dad said this would generate a little heat, but he didn't have to tell us this. It seemed like the cold automatically wanted us to get together and huddle up. My little sister, Joetta, sat in the middle, and all you could see were her eyes because she had a scarf wrapped around her head. I was next to her, and on the outside was my mother. Mama was the only one who wasn't born in Flint, so the cold was coldest to her. All you could see were her eyes, too, and they were shooting bad looks at Dad. She always blamed him for bringing her all the way from Alabama to Michigan, a state she called a giant icebox. Dad was bundled up on the other side of Joey, trying to look at anything but Mama. Next to Dad, sitting with a little space between them, was my older brother, Brian. Brian had just turned 13, so he was officially a teenage juvenile delinquent, and didn't think it was cool to touch anybody, or let anybody touch him, even if it meant he froze to death. Brian had tucked a blanket between him and Dad and drove down into the cushions of the couch to make sure he couldn't be touched. Dad turned on the TV to try to make us forget how cold we were, but all that did was get him into trouble. There was a special news report on Channel 12 telling about how bad the weather was, and Dad groaned when the guy said, "If you think it's cold now, wait until tonight. The temperature is expected to drop into record low territory, possibly reaching the negative 20s. In fact, we won't be seeing anything above zero for the next 4 to 5 days." He was smiling when he said this, but none of the Watsons family thought it was funny. We all looked over at Dad. He just shook his head and pulled the blanket over his eyes. Then the guy on the TV said, "Here's a little something we can use to brighten our spirits and give us some hope for the future. The temperature in Atlanta, Georgia is forecast to reach—" Dad coughed real loud and he jumped at the couch to turn the TV off before we heard the weatherman say, "the mid-70s. The guy might as well tied Dad to a tree and said, 'Ready, aim, fire.' Atlanta," Mama said. "That's 150 miles from home." "Walona," Dad said. "I knew it. Mama said. I knew it. I should have listened to Moses Henderson." "Who?" I asked. Dad said, "Oh, Lord, not that sorry story. You got to let me tell what happened with him." Mama said, "There's not a whole lot to tell. Just a story about a young girl who made a bad choice. But if you do tell it, make sure you get all the facts right." We all huddled as close as we could get because we knew Dad was going to try to make us forget about being cold by cutting up. Me and Joey started smiling right away, and Brian tried to look cool and bored. "Kids," Dad said, "I almost wasn't your father. You guys came to real close to having a clown for a daddy named Hambone Henderson." "Daniel Watson, you stop it right there. You're the one who started that Hambone nonsense. Before you started that, everyone called him his Christian name, Moses. And he was a respectable boy, too. He wasn't a clown at all. But the name stuck, didn't it? Hambone Henderson. Me and your granddaddy called him that because the boy had a head shaped like a ham bone, just like it. Had more knots and bumps on his head than a dinosaur. So as you guys sit here and give me those dirty looks because it's a little chilly outside, ask yourself if you'd rather be a little cool or go through life known as the Hambonettes." Me and Joey cracked up. Brian kind of chuckled, and Mama put her hand over her mouth. She did this whenever she was going to give a smile because she had a big gap in her front teeth. If Mama thought something was funny, first you'd see her trying to keep her lips together to hide the gap. Then, if the smile got to be too strong, you'd see the gap for a hot second before Mama's hand would come up to cover it, and then she'd crack up too. Laughing only encouraged Dad to cut up some more. So when he saw the whole family thinking he was funny, he really started putting on a show. He stood up in front of the TV. "Yup, Hambone Henderson proposed to your mother around the same time I did. Fought dirty, too. He told your mama a pack of lies about me, and when she didn't believe them, he told her a pack of lies about Flint." Dad started talking Southern style, imitating this Hambone guy. "Willoma, I heard you tell weather up that far north in Michigan. Willoma, I heard about the weather up that far north in Flint, Michigan again. Heard it's colder than the inside of an icebox. Seen a movie about it. Think it was made up in Flint. Movie called Nanook of the North. Yep. Do believe for sure it was made in Flint. Flint, Michigan. Folks live there in these things called igloos. According to what I seen in this here movie, most folks in Flint is Chinese. Don't believe I seen nan one colored person in the whole dang city. You a Bama girl. Don't you believe you be too happy living in no igloo. Ain't got nothing against them, but don't believe you'd be too happy living amongst a whole slew of Chinese folks. Don't believe you like the food. Only thing them Chinese folks in the movies ate was whales and seals. Don't believe you'd like no whale meat. Don't taste like chicken. Don't taste like pork at all. Mama pulled her hand away from her mouth. Daniel Watson, you are one lying man. Only thing you said was true, that being in Flint was like living in an igloo. I knew I should have listened to Moses. Maybe these babies might have been born with lumpy heads, but at least they'd have been warm lumpy heads. You know Birmingham is a good place, and I don't mean just the weather easy. The life is slower, the people are friendlier. Oh yeah, Dad interrupted. They're a laughing minute down there. Let's see. Where was that coloreds-only bathroom downtown? Danny, you know what I mean. Things aren't perfect, but people are more honest about the way they feel. She took her mean eyes off Daddy and put them on Brian. And folks there do know how to respect their parents. Brian rolled his eyes like he didn't care. All he was tucked under a blanket farther and couldn't into the couch's cushions. Dad didn't like the direction the conversation was going, so he called the landlord for the 100th time. The phone was still busy. That snake in the grass has got his phone off the hook. Well, it's going to be cold. Too cold to stay here tonight. Let me call Sydney. She just had that new furnace put in. Maybe we can spend the night there. Aunt Sydney was kind of mean, but her house was always warm, so we kept our fingers crossed that she was home. Everyone, even Brian, cheered when Dad got Aunt Cindy, and she told us to hurry over before we froze to death. Dad went out to try to get the brown bomber started. That's what we called our car. It was a 1948 Plymouth that was dull brown and real big. Brian said it turned brown. No, Brian said it was turd brown. Uncle Bud gave it to Dad when it was 13 years old, and we had it for 2 years. Me and Dad took real good care of it, but some of the time it didn't like to start up in the winter. After 5 minutes, Dad came back in, huffing and puffing and slapping his arms across his chest. Well, it was touch and go for a while, but the great brown one pulled through again. Everyone cheered. But me and Brian quit cheering and started frowning right away. By the way Dad smiled at us, we knew what was coming next. Dad pulled out 2 ice scrapers out of his pocket and said, "Okay, boys, let's get out there and knock those windows out." We moaned and groaned and put on some more coats and went outside to scrape the car's windows. I could tell by the way he was pouting that Brian was going to try to get out of doing his share of the work. "I'm not going to do your part, Brian. You better do it, and I'm not playing either." "Shut up, punk." I went over to the brown bomber's passenger side and started hacking away at a slab of ice that was still over the windows. I finished Mama's window and took a break. Scraping ice off windows when it's that cold can kill you. I didn't hear any sound come from the other side of the car, so I yelled out, "I'm serious, Brian. I'm not doing that side too. I'm only going to do half the windshield, and I don't care what you do to me." The windshield on the bomber wasn't like a new 1963 car. It had a big bar running down the middle of it, divided in half. "Shut your stupid mouth. I got something more important to do right now." I peeked around the back of the car to see what Bry was up to. The only thing he had scraped off was the outside mirror, and he was bending down to look at himself in it. He saw me and said, "You know what, Square? I must be adopted. There just ain't no way 2 folks as ugly as your mama and daddy could have given birth to someone as sharp as me." He was running his hands over his head like he was brushing his hair. I said, "Forget you," and I went back over to the other side of the car to finish the back window. I had half of the ice off when I had to stop again and catch my breath. I heard Brian mumble my name. I said, "You think I'm stupid? I'm not going to work. It's not going to work this time." He mumbled my name again. It sounded like his mouth was full of something. I knew this was a trick. I knew this was going to be How to Survive Blizzard Part 2. How to Survive a Blizzard Part 1 had been last night when I was outside playing in the snow, and Brian and his running buddy, Buphead, came walking by. Buphead has officially been a juvenile delinquent even longer than Brian. "Say, kid," Bi had said, "you want to learn something that might save your stupid life one day?" I should have known better, but I was bored, and I think maybe the cold weather was making my brain so I said, "What's that?" "We're going to teach you how to survive a blizzard." "How?" Byron put his hands in front of his face and said, "That is the most important thing to remember, okay? This is the most important thing to remember, okay? Why? Well, first, we got to show you what it feels like to be trapped in a blizzard. You ready?" He whispered something to Buphead, and they both laughed. "I'm ready." I should have known the only reason Buphead and Bi would want to play with me was to do something mean. "Okay," Bi said. "First thing you got to worry about is high winds." Byron and Buphead each grabbed one of my arms and one of my legs and swung me between them. "Woo, blizzard warnings, blizzard warnings, woo, take cover." Buphead continued to count to 3, and on the third swing, they let me go in the air. I landed headfirst in a snowbank. But that was okay, because I had 3 coats on, 2 sweaters, a t-shirt, 3 pairs of pants, 4 socks, along with a scarf, a hat, and a hood. These guys couldn't have hurt me if they'd thrown me off the Empire State Building. After I decided to climb out of the snowbank, they started laughing, and so did I. "Cool, baby, bruh," Bi said. "You passed that part of the test with a B+. What do you think, Buphead?" Buphead said, "Yeah, I'd give the little punk an A." They whispered something more and started laughing again. "Okay," Bi said. "Second thing you got to learn is how to keep your balance in a high wind. You got to be good at it so you don't get blowed into no polar bear dens or anything." They put me between them and started making me spin around and round. It seemed like they spun me for about a half an hour. When slobs started flying out of my mouth, they let me stop, and I wobbled around for a while before they pushed me back into the same snowbank. When everything stopped going in circles, I got up and we all laughed again. They whispered some more, and then Bi said, "What do you think, Buphead?" He kept his balance a good long time. I'm going to have to give him A-. I ain't a hardest grader as you. I'm going to give the little punk double A-. "Okay, Kenny. Now, the last part of surviving a blizzard. You ready?" "Yup." "You passed the wind test. You did real good on the balance test, but now you got to see if you're ready to graduate. You remember what we told you was the most important thing about surviving?" "Yup." "Okay, here we go," Buphead said. "Tell him about the final exam." Buphead turned me around to look at him, putting my back to Byron. "Okay, Square," he started. "I want to make sure you're ready for this one. You've done so good so far. I want to make sure you don't blow it at graduation time. You think you ready?" I nodded, getting ready to be thrown into the snowbank real hard this time. I made up my mind I wasn't going to cry or anything. I made up my mind that no matter how hard they threw me in the snow, I was going to get up laughing. "Okay," Buphead said. "Everything's cool. You remember what your brother said about putting your hands up? Like this?" I covered my face with my gloves. "Yeah, that's it." Buphead looked over my shoulder and Byron's and then said, "Woo, high winds, blowing snow. Woo, look out, blizzard are coming. Death around the corner, look out." Byron mumbled my name, and I turned around to see why his voice sounded funny. As soon as I looked at him, Byron blasted me in the face with a mouthful of snow. Man, it was hard to believe how much stuff Bi could put in his mouth. He and Buphead just about died laughing as I stood there with snow and spit and ice dripping off my face. Byron caught his breath and said, "Oh man, you flunked. You done so good, and then you flunked the blowing snow section of How to Survive a Blizzard. You forgot to put your hands up." "What'd you say, Buphead? F?" "Yeah, double F minuses." It was a good thing my face was numb from the cold already, or I might have froze to death. I was too embarrassed about getting tricked to tell them so I went into the house and I watched TV. So as me and Bi scraped the ice off the brown bomber, I wasn't going to get fooled again. I kept on chopping ice the back window and ignored Bi's mumbling voice. The next time I took a little rest, Byron was still calling my name, but sounding like he had something in his mouth. He was saying, "Key, key, here, here." When I started banging on the door of the car, I went to take a peek. When he started banging on the door of the car, I went to take a peek at what was going on. Bi was leaned over the outside mirror, looking at something real close. Big puffs of steam were coming out of the side mirror. I picked a big, hard chunk of ice, getting ready for Byron's trick. "Key, key, hey, hey. Go get hey." "I'm not playing, Byron. I'm not that stupid. You better start doing your side of the car or I'll tear you up with this ice ball." He banged his hand against the car harder and started stomping his feet. "Oh, please, key, hit me, hit your mom." I raised the ice chunk over my head. "I'm not playing. Bi, you better get busy or I'm telling Dad." I moved closer, and when I got right next to him, I could see boogers running out of his nose and tears running down his cheeks. They weren't tears from the cold either. Those were big, juicy crybaby tears. I dropped me chunk of ice. "Bi, what's wrong?" "Hey, key, go get her." I moved closer. I couldn't believe my eyes. Byron's mouth was frozen on the mirror. He was stuck as a fly on flypaper. I could have done a lot of stuff to him. If it had been me with my lips stuck on something like this, he would have tortured me for a couple of days before he got help. Not me, though. I nearly broke my neck trying to get into the house to rescue Byron. As soon as I ran to the front door, Mama, Daddy, and Joey all yelled, "Close the door!" "Mama, quick, it's Bi. He froze up outside." No one seemed too impressed. I screamed, "Really? He froze to the car. Help, he's crying." That shook them up. You could cut Byron's head off and he probably wouldn't cry. "Kenneth, Bernard, Watson, what on earth are you talking about?" "Mama, please hurry up." Mama, Dad, and Joey threw on some extra coats and followed me to the brown bomber. The fly was stuck and buzzing. "Oh, Mama, hurry, get me out of there." "Oh, my Lord," Mama screamed. And I thought she was going to do one of those movie-style faints. She even put her hand over her forehead and staggered back a little bit. Joey, of course, started crying right along with Byron. Dad was doing his best not to explode laughing. Big puffs of smoke were coming out of his nose and mouth as he tried to squeeze his laughs down. Finally put his head on his arms and leaned against the car's hood and howled. "Byron," Mama said, gently wiping the tears off his cheeks with the end of her scarf. "It's okay, sweetheart. How did this happen?" She sounded like she was going to be crying herself in a minute. Dad raised his head and said, "What are you asking about how it happened? Can't you tell, Winona? This little knucklehead was kissing his reflection in the mirror and his lips got stuck." Dad took a real deep breath. "Is your tongue stuck too?" "No, quit teasing, Daddy. Help. Well, at least the boy hasn't got too passionate with himself. Dad thought this was hilarious, and he put his head back on his arms. Mama didn't see anything funny. "Daniel, Watson, what are we going to do? What do y'all do when this happens up here? Huh?" Mama started talking Southern style when she got worried. Instead of saying here, she said here. Instead of saying you all, she said y'all. Daddy stopped laughing long enough to say, "Well, Lona, I've lived in Flint all my life, 35 years, and I swear this is the first time ever I've seen anyone with their lips frozen to a mirror. Honey, I don't know what to do, but wait till this thaws out." "Pull him off, Dad," I suggested. Byron went nuts. He started banging his hands on the brown bomber doors again and mumbling, No. Joey blurbered out, "This is just like that horrible story Kenny read to me about the guy Narasi who stared at himself so long he forgot to eat and starved to death. Mama, please save him." She went over to and hugged her arms around stupid Byron's waist. Mama asked Dad, "What about hot water? Couldn't we pour hot water on the mirror so it would warm up and he could get off?" She kept wiping tears off Bi's cheek and said, Don't worry, baby. Don't you worry. We're going to get you off of this. But her voice was so shaky and southern, I wondered if we'd be driving around in summer with a skeleton dangling from the outside of our mirror by its lips. Dad said, I don't know. Pouring water on him might be the worst thing, but it might be our only chance. Why don't you go get some hot tap water and I'll stay out here to wipe his cheeks? Joey told Bi. Don't worry, we'll come right back. She stood up on her tiptoes and gave Bi a kiss, and then Then she and Mama ran inside. Dad cracked up all over again. Well, lover boy, I guess this means no one can call you Hot Lips, can they? Dad was killing himself. Or the last of the red hot lovers either, huh? He tugged on Byron's ear a little, pulling his face back. Bi went nuts again. Don't do that! Mama! Help! Kitty! Go get Mama! Hurry! I guess that's not going to work, is it? Every time he wiped tears and a little mustache of boogers on Byron's lip, Dad couldn't help laughing, until a little river of tears was coming out of his eyes, too. Dad tried to straighten his face when Mama came, and Joey came running back with a steaming glass of hot water, but the tears were still running down his lips. Mama tried to pour water on the mirror, but her hands were shaking so much she splashed it all over the place. Dad tried, too, but he couldn't look at Byron without laughing and shaking. That meant I had to do it. I knew that if my lips were frozen on something and everybody was shaking too much to pour water on them except Byron, he'd do some real cruel stuff to me. He probably would have accidentally splashed my eyes until they were frozen open, or put water in my ears until I couldn't hear anything. But not me. I gently poured a little stream of water over the mirror. Dad was right. This was the worst thing we could do. The water made a crackling sound and froze solid as soon as it touched the mirror and Bi's lips. Maybe Bi's mouth was frozen, but his hands sure weren't, and he popped me right in the forehead hard. I hate to say it, but I started crying too. It's no wonder the neighbors called us the weird Watsons behind our backs. There we were, all 5 of us standing around a car with the temperature about 1,000,000 degrees below zero, and each and every one of us crying. "Top, top!" Bi yelled. "Daniel Watson, what are we going to do?" Mama went nuts. "You got to get this boy to the hospital. My baby's going to die." Daddy tried to look serious real quick. "Well, Lona, how far do you think we get driving down the street with this little clown attached to our mirror? What am I supposed to do? Have him run beside the car all the way down to the emergency room?" Mama looked real close at Bi's mouth. Closed her eyes for a second like she was praying, and she finally said, "Daniel, you get in there and call the hospital and see what they say we should do. Joey and Kenny, go with your daddy." Dad and Joey went crying into the house. I stayed by the brown bomber. I figured Mama was clearing everybody out for something. Byron did too, and he looked at Mama in a real nervous way. Mama put her scarf around Byron's face and said, "Sweetheart, you know we gotta do something. I'm just gonna try to warm your face up a little. Just relax." "Okay, you know I love you and wouldn't do anything to hurt you, right?" If Mama was trying to make Byron feel relaxed, she wasn't doing a real good job at it. All this talk about love and not getting hurt and making him real nervous. "What are you gonna do, huh? Do hurt ye? Kenny, help!" Mama moved the scarf away, put one hand on Byron's chin and the other on his forehead. "No, help me, Kenny!" Mama gave Byron's head a good hard snatch. My eyes automatically shut and my hands automatically flew up to cover my ears, and my mouth automatically flew open and screamed out, "Yow!" I didn't see it, but I bet Byron's lips stretched a mile before they finally let go of that mirror. I bet his lips looked like some giant rubber band before they snapped away from that glass. I didn't hear it, but I bet Byron's lips made a sound like a giant piece of paper being ripped in half. When I opened my eyes, Byron was running to the house with his hands over his mouth and Mama following right behind. I ran over to the mirror to see how much of Byron's mouth was still stuck there. The dirty dogs let Byron get away with not doing his share of the window, and I had to do the whole car myself. When we were finally going to Aunt Sydney's house, I decided to pay Byron back for punching me in the forehead and getting out of doing his part of the window scraping. Joey was sitting between us, so I felt it kind of safe. I said to her loud, "Joetta, guess what? I'm thinking about writing my own comic book." "About what?" "Well, it's going to be about this real mean criminal who's had a terrible accident that turns him into a superhero." Joey knew I was going to tease Byron, so she sat there looking like I should be careful of what I said. Finally, I asked her, "Do you want to know what I'm going to call this new superhero?" "What?" "I'm going to call him Lipless Wonder. All he does is beat up superheroes smaller than him, and the only thing he's afraid of is a cold mirror." All the weird Watsons, except for Byron, cracked up. Mama's hand even covered her mouth. I was the only one who saw Byron flip me a dirty finger sign and tried to whisper something about smearing all the Vaseline Mama had put on his lips. "You wait, I'm going to kick your little behind." Then he made his eyes go cross, which was his favorite way of teasing me. But I didn't care. I knew who won that time. Let's see, how long is chapter 2? That's not long. I'll read it. Chapter 2. Give my regards to Clark Poindexter. Larry Dunn was the king of the kindergarten to fourth grade, where I went to school at Clark Elementary. He was the king because he was a lot older than anyone else and twice as strong as the rest of us. He was stronger because he was almost full grown, and he had flunked some grade 2 or 3 times. He was the third oldest kid at Clark. The only ones older than him and stronger than him were Byron and Bupphead, who were in the 6th grade, and who also flunked some grades at least once. We weren't sure because it was something Mama and Daddy didn't talk about. Larry Dunn was the king of the kindergarten to 4th grade only because Byron didn't care about them. Larry was the king of Clark, but Byron was a god. It seemed like that would make me a prince, or a real strong angel, or something, but it didn't work that way. I was just another 4th grade punk. I guess having the school's god as a brother did give me some kind of special rights, but not a whole bunch. It helped me with some stupid stuff, like the time I found a dollar bill, I got too excited and was crazy enough to show it to Larry Dunn. I knew this was a big mistake. About the second before he stuck his hand out and said, "Let me see it." "What could I do?" "Kenny," he said, "where'd you find this buck?" "Outside the school, over by the Kenilworth." Larry turned my dollar over and said, and I started getting nervous. "You know what, Kenny?" "What?" I held my breath. "This is some real strange stuff, but I lost 50 cents over Kenilworth yesterday, and I bet my 50 cents got hooked up with somebody else's 50 cents and made this here buck." I let my breath go, smiled, and nodded. We went to the store to get change, and Larry Dunn got back 50 cents he lost, and I got to keep the other 50 cents that got hooked up with Larry's. I knew if it wasn't for Byron being my big brother, Larry would have said something like, "Since my 50 cents found this other 50 cents and they hooked up to make this here buck, I'm going to keep the whole thing. You know the rules. Finders, keepers, losers, weepers." Having the school's god as my relative helped in some other ways, too. I had 2 things wrong with me that would have got me beat up and teased a lot. More than I did if it hadn't been for By. The first thing was because I loved to read. People thought I was real smart, teachers especially. Teachers started treating me different than other kids when I was in the 1st grade. At first I thought it was cool for them to think I was smart, but then I found out it made me enemies with some of the other kids. Back when I was in the 2nd grade, Miss Henry used to take me to different classrooms and have me read stuff out of the Bible or the newspaper in front of the older kids. This was a lot of fun, and so I started looking up from what I was reading and noticed while Miss Henry and the other teachers were smiling, a mile, a minute, all the other kids had faces twisted up or looking at me like I was a 6-legged dog. 2 years ago, Miss Henry took me to Miss Ohm's 5th grade class. Mr. Ohm. Mr. Ohms was the toughest teacher in the school, and just being in front of him was kind of scary. He looked down at me and said, "Good morning, Mr. Watson. I hope you're in for good form today." I just nodded at him because I wasn't sure what that meant. "Don't be nervous, Kenny," Miss Henry said. "Mr. Alms would like you to read a few passages from Langston Hughes." She handed me a book and said, "You wait here while we introduce you to the class." Man, some of the time I wished I was as smart as these teachers. Some of the times I wished I was as smart as these teachers thought I was, because if I had been, I would have dropped that book and run all the way home. If I'd been smart enough to figure out what was going to happen next, I would have never gone into that classroom. I stood in the hall, looking at the stuff they wanted me to read, while Mr. Alms told his class, "All right, I have a special treat for you today. I often told you that as Negroes, the world many times is a hostile place." I saw Mr. Alms walking back and forth and whacking a yardstick in his hand. I pointed out time and time again how vital it is that one is able to read well. I've stressed on numerous occasions the importance of being familiar and comfortable with literature. Today, Miss Henry and I would like to give you a demonstration of your own possibilities in this regard. I want you to carefully note how advanced this second grade student is, and I particularly want you to be aware of the effect his skills have upon you. I want you to be aware that some of our kids read at miraculous levels. I saw Mr. Alms point the yardstick at someone somewhere in the class and say, "Perhaps you'd like to finish the introduction? I think you know our guest quite well." Whoever he pointed at said, "What? I didn't do nothing." Miss Henry waved at me to come inside and stand in front of the class. I guess I was too nervous about Miss Alms to have recognized the voice before, but as soon as I walked in the classroom, I froze. There, in 2 seats on the closest at the teacher's desk on the very first row, sat Buckhead and Byron. The Langston Hughes book jumped out of my hand, and the whole class laughed. Everyone but Byron. His eyes locked on mine, and I felt things start melting inside of me. Mr. Alms slammed the yardstick on his desk, and the class got real quiet. "Let me see if you find this so humorous after you've heard how well this young man reads. And Byron Watson, if you're incapable of taking some of the fire out of your eyes, I assure you I will find a way to assist you. If instead of trying to intimidate your younger brother, you would emulate him and use that mind of yours, perhaps you'd find things much easier. Perhaps you wouldn't be making another appearance in the 5th grade next year, now would you, Byron got one more dirty look in at me, and then he looked down at his desk. Mr. Holmes might have tied me up to a pole and said, "Ready, aim, fire." I read through the Langston Hughes stuff real quick, but that was a mistake. Miss Henry said, "Slow down some, Kenneth." And then she took the book from me and handed it back, upside down. She had a great big smile when she told Mr. Holmes, "When he goes too fast, this slows him down a bit." I read some more with the book upside down and got some real strange looks from the 5th graders. Finally, they let me quit. Mr. Holmes stood up and clapped his hands. A couple of the old kids did too. Byron never looked at me the whole time, but Bubhead was giving me enough dirty looks for the both of them. "Bravo! Outstanding, Mr. Watson! Your future is unlimited! Bravo!" All I could do was to figure out a way to get home and get home alive. I didn't even get to get out of the schoolyard before Byron and Bubhead cut up to me. A little crowd hunched around us, and everyone was real excited because they knew I was about to get jacked up. Bubhead said, "Here that little egghead punk is." "Leave the little clown alone," Byron said. "It's a crying shame taking him around like a circus freak." He punched me kind of soft in the arm and said, "At least you ought to make 'em pay for you doing that mess. If it was me and they'd be coming out their pockets with some folding money every time they took me around." I couldn't believe it. I think Byron was proud of me. When everybody saw Byron wasn't going to do anything for being smart, they all decided they better not do anything either. I still got called Egghead and Poindexter Professor some of the time, but that wasn't bad compared to what could have happened. The other thing people would have teased me about a lot more if it hadn't been for Byron was my eye. Mama said it wasn't important. that I was a real handsome little boy. But ever since I'd been born, one of my eyeballs had been kind of lazy. That means instead of looking where I tell it to look, it wanted to rest in the corner of my eye next to my nose. I've done lots of things to make it better, but none of them work. I've done exercises where I had to look that way, then this way, and then up that way, and down and up. But when I went to look in the mirror, the eye still went back to its corner. I want a patch on my other eye to make the lazy one work, but that didn't do anything either. It was fun to play like I was a pirate for a while, but that got boring. Finally, Byron gave me some good advice. He noticed that when I talked to people, I squinched my lazy eye kind of shut, and then I put my hand on my face to cover it. I only did this because it got hard to talk to someone when they were staring at your eye instead of listening to what you had to say. Look, man, he told me, if you don't want people to look at your messed up eye, you just got to do this. Byron made me stand still and look straight ahead. Then he stood on my side and told me to look at him. I turned my head. No, man, keep your head straight and look at me sideways. I did it. See, you ain't cockeyed no more. Your eye's as straight as an arrow now. I went to the bathroom and stood on the toilet and leaned over and looked in the mirror sideways. And Byron was right. I couldn't help smiling. Mama was right, too. I was kind of handsome, little guy, when I looked at myself sideways, and both eyes were pointing in the same direction. Even though my older brother was Clark Elementary School's god, that didn't mean I never got teased or beat up at all. I still had to fight a lot, and I still got called cockeyed Kenny, and I still had people stare at my eye, and I still had to watch it when they made their eyes go cross when they were teasing me. It seemed like one of these things happened to me every day. But if it hadn't been for Byron, I knew they would have happened a whole lot more. That's why I was kind of nervous about what was going to happen if Byron ever got out of 6th grade and went to junior high school before I caught up to him. That's why I was going to send off for that book, Learn Karate in 3 Weeks. That was in the back of the comic books. The worst part about being teased was riding the school bus on those mornings when Byron and Buphead decided they were going to skip school. We'd be standing on the corner waiting for the bus. Byron, Buphead, and the other old thugs in the bunch, Larry Dunn, Banky, and all the other young thugs in another bunch, the regular kids like Joetta and the third bunch, and me off to the side by myself. When we saw the bus about 3 blocks away, we all got in a line. Old thugs, young thugs, regular kids, then me. It wasn't until the bus stopped and the door opened that I knew whether Bi and Buphead were going. I hated when Bi walked past and said, "Give my regards to Clark, Poindexter." Some of the time those words were like a signal for the other kids to jump on me. But the day I stopped hating the bus so much began with those same words. We were all lined up. "Give my regards to Clark, Poindexter," Bi said, and disappeared around the bus's back. I got on the bus and took the seat right behind the driver. The days by road, I would sit a few rows back from him on the back. On the other days, the driver was the most protection. The bus drove down the public housing, and after everyone was picked up, we headed toward Clark. But today, the bus driver did something he'd never done before. He noticed 2 kids running up late, and he stopped to let them get on. Every other time someone was running late, he'd just laugh at them and tell the rest of us, "This is the only way you little punks are going to learn to be punctual. I hope that fool has a pleasant walk to school." Then no matter how hard the late kid banged on the side of the bus, the driver would just take off, laughing out the window. That was part of my miracle. That let me know something special was going to happen. As soon as the doors of the bus opened and 2 strange new boys got on, part 2 of my miracle happened. Every once in a while, Mama would make me go to Sunday school with Joey, even though it was just a bunch of singing and coloring books and listening to Mrs. Davison. I had learned one thing. I learned about getting saved. I learned about how someone could come to you when you were feeling real bad and take all your problems away and make you feel better. I learned that the person who saved you, your personal savior, was sent by God to protect you and help you out. When the bigger one of the 2 boys got on the bus late, said to the driver in a real down south accent, "Thank you for stopping, sir," I knew right away that God had finally gotten sick of me being teased and picked on all the time. As I looked at this new boy with a great big smile and the jacket with holes in the sleeves and the raggedy tennis shoes and the tore up blue jean, I knew who he was. Maybe he didn't live 1,000,000 years ago, and maybe he didn't have a beard and long hair, and maybe he wasn't born under a star, but I knew God had finally sent some help. I knew God had finally sent me my personal Savior. And as soon as the boy thanked the driver in that real polite country way, I jerked around in my seat to see what the other kids were going to do to him. Whenever someone new started coming to Clark, most of the other kids took some time to see what he was like. The boys would see if he was tough or weak, if he was cool or a square, and the girls would look to see if he was cute or ugly, and then they'd decide how to treat him. I knew they weren't going to waste any time with this new guy. He was going to be real easy and real quick with him. He was like nobody we'd ever seen before. He was raggedy, he was country, he was skinny, and he was smiling at everybody a mile a minute. The boy with him had to be his little brother. He looked like a little shrunk up version of the big one. Everyone had stopped what they were doing and were real quiet. Some were standing up to get a better look. The older one got an even bigger smile on his face and waved real hard at everybody. And the little one, shrunk up version of him, smiled and did the same thing. And then they said, "Hiya, y'all." And I knew that here was someone who was going to be the easiest for the kids to make fun of more than me. Most kids were just staring. Then Larry Dunn said, "Lord, today, look at that nappy-headed, down-home country cornflake the cat done drugged up from Mississippi, y'all." About 1,000,000 fingers pointed at the new kids, and 1,000,000 laughs almost knocked them over. Larry Dunn threw an apple from the back of the bus, and the new kid got his hand up just in time to block it from hitting him in the face. Little bits of apple exploded all over the kid, his brother, and me. The other kids went wild laughing and saying to each other, "Hiya, y'all." The bus driver jumped out of his seat and stood between the new kid and Larry Dunn. You see how kids is? This boy shows some manners and some respect, and all you want to do is attack him? That's why none of y'all ever gonna be nothing." The bus driver was really mad. "Larry Dunn, you better sit your ass down and cut the mess out. I know you don't want to start panning on folks, do you? Not with what I know about your mama." Someone said, "Ooh," and Larry sat down. The bus was real quiet. We'd never seen the driver get this mad before. He pushed two new kids into the same seat as me and told them, "Don't you pay no mind to them little fools. They ain't happy unless they're dragging someone down." And then he had to add, "Y'all just sit next to Poindexter. He don't bother no one." I sat there and looked at them sideways. I didn't do anything to them, and they didn't say anything to me. But I was kind of surprised that God would send a Savior to me in such raggedy clothes. All right, Chapter 3 is the world's greatest dinosaur war ever. I'm going to stop there, and I'm going to end this little video. I haven't read this one in a while. I wanted to read Bud Not Buddy, but didn't get a chance to. It's interesting to me, though, the relationships that he's showing us between the older brother, the younger brother, and even the little sister, Daddy and Mama. I'm not sure if you know what historical part that he's referring to when he says he went to Birmingham, Alabama during the darkest moments in history. But if you want to get a sneak peek, just Google it and check out Birmingham, Alabama, 1963, and see what some of the headlines are. And it'll give you a little foreshadowing of what we might get next time. Anyway, if you tuned into the video, make sure you just make a comment at the bottom that you were here and you listened to it. Even if you only listened to a couple minutes, just let me know you were here and you saw it, okay? And I will pick this up later this week and post it again. All right, have a great, great night.